Okay, let's switch to English now. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Chris Lukassen. Chris is a renowned product management expert, consultant, and the author of The Product Samurai, the tactical guide to product management. With over 20 years of experience in the field, Chris had helped many organizations in different industries to develop their to improve their product development processes and to deliver successful products to the market. In his keynote today, Chris will share his insights on the first steps you should take to start as in an amazing way as a product manager. So please join me in welcoming Chris Lukassen to the stage.
Oh, hello everybody, and welcome. And I'm so glad he did the presentation, or he did the introduction in English, because I brought my daughter along. She's sitting in the back. And she came to a country and they speak a different language and they have money with their face of their dad on. So that's like next level parenthood. As for today, my first question, is everybody excited? Yeah. That didn't really sound that excited. Oh, thanks. Is everybody excited? Yes. Ah, a little bit better. Have you already made new friends? Okay. So part of this conference is also about meeting new people and exchanging ideas. I think knowledge comes into existence when people meet. It's not a one-way traffic. It's being created by the people as people on your table. So let's see if we can work with that. The topic for today is about a master plan for your first 30 days as a product owner. So who was here 6 years ago? Yeah, the organizers. Okay, I was here 6 years ago and I told you a little bit about product development and how you could build new products, and maybe a little bit about what you should take into account. But what I didn't talk a lot about is what happens if you join a company and there is already a product. And that happens a lot to us product people. Are there product people in the room? So who's product people? Who works with product people? Maybe as an agile coach? So you know what your product people should be doing, hopefully. But sometimes they're stuck, they're in a company and there is already a product and they need a plan. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so it's all about what do successful product owners do when they go into a company or an organization and there is already a product. It's not a greenfield situation. Alright? Is this something you can recognize? Yeah? Cool. Maybe even maybe the other way around is easier. So you all seen the series, huh? I think that was mandatory pre-reading. Sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. So on your table, I want you to have a 1-minute table discussion on imagining you as a saboteur. So you're working for your competitor's company and you somehow manage to get inside and get the title of product owner. And your mission is to sabotage the company and the product as fast as possible. Think about how fast can you sabotage the team, the product, the organizations. Have a table discussion for 1 minute, and then we'll get back. And the program starts now. I need time.
Fără de ce zi, ezigează. Încurajez conflict în echipă. Îmi doresc unătate. Scoți netul. Ai rezolvat toată compania. Questo mi deve vedere al product quello lì. Merge direzione, che tutto fatto che c'è stakeholder in.
Alright, time's up. Time's up. So I'm interested. Berlin, what can we do to sabotage the org?
Having a non-responsive customer.
Having a non-responsive customers, put yourself between the development team. Something else, maybe over here, Masai?
Promise to the customer that we're going to finish it today.
Oh, we're going to build everything. It's going to be done instantly. It's going to be exactly what you want. What else can we do? Cincinnati.
Bad requirement.
Bad requirements. What are bad requirements? Requirements just are, right? It's what's required.
Change the processes.
Change the process, change the priority. Yeah, okay. Anything else? Oh, there's somebody who really wants to talk. Tokyo!
So, if you are changing the target audience, something that's completely on
So, changing the target audience. We're supposed to build it for this type of people, and then we suddenly switch. No, obviously, it had to be something else. Yeah. Alright, so I'm guessing that this is something you've all experienced, to some extent. And maybe in a moment of silent reflection, maybe there is something that you have done yourself. As a leader. Okay, so it's easy to sabotage stuff. So, but how to do it properly, or how to have a better chance of success? Because in a complex world, it's really hard to give you one plan and it will always work. But we're going to try. And so in doing this, I researched the series. I spent all my time watching all the episodes. But I came up with this model, because as a consultant, you always come up with models. And models are always squares, but because we're agile, they're always round. So I made a circle for you, and we have 5 quadrants. So if you watch the series, it's all about the leader. It is about the goal they're trying to achieve. It is about the discipline of the team. And of course the knowledge that they have. But there's also hidden in the series, there's a moral cause. Like trying to beat the capitalist system. Which is an interesting theme throughout the series. And I try to, the gaps also have meaning. So between the leader and the goal, this is where vision exists. It's about how you transfer what you have in your mind, where you want to bring the people, and how you turn that into goals for the team. Between the goals and the discipline is where action lives. And between discipline and knowledge, you're talking about positioning. I'll get back to that later. And between knowledge and the leader is how you can learn. Alright, does this make sense? You're already too tired. Okay, so but if you translate this to product management, because this is all about product ownership, product management, you could translate it into these 5 questions. So when you are new to a company, you're trying to build a new product, you could ask yourself the question, well, are the people aligned? Right? Am I the proper leader for the team? Are we, like we talked about the development team, are they aligned? What makes a product successful? Knowing that in the beginning is super important to be successful. How does this particular company work? What are the processes they use? And what does the data tell us? And obviously, because this is an agile conference, can we speed things up? Can we move through this circle faster? That's always helpful. And let's start with people. How many of you know this diagram? About 30, it should be, it's been around since the 50s. Dr. Mason, I think Clayton Mason wrote it in the book, The Influencer Agenda, and he talks about putting people in boxes. No, he doesn't talk about it. He talks about helpful mechanisms to help you organize your stakeholders. And on the one axis you have how much power do they have in the organization, and that can be formal power, or it can be soft power. Some people have influence in organizations and maybe you're not aware of it. And they also have maybe an interest to your product or your product development. And now it can be helpful to classify people. Product people are always busy. They never have enough time. So it makes sense to figure out where do I spend my time. And for many teams that are doing Scrum, who's doing Scrum? Yeah, so Scrum has a ton of events. And I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this, but one of the events is the sprint review. And all people always complain, the real stakeholders are not coming to the sprint review. And that's probably because you're inviting the wrong people. Alright? So we'll get back to that. But that might be something that you could get from this diagram. Now this diagram is just a model. And I have this favorite saying, all models are wrong. Some are useful. Not mine, I stole it somewhere. But it's just a model of the truth. If it doesn't work for you, change it. Like for one organization that I work with, we changed this into how much power do they have and how frequently do they change their minds. And you can imagine if you have very powerful stakeholders that keep changing their minds, you want to spend more time with them. So adapt the model to what you find is useful. Let's check the room. Okay, lots of power, not so much interest. What kind of stakeholders are typically in that quadrant? I already had these tables. That sounds like a nice place. What can you tell me? What people have lots of power, but not much interest in your product? Yeah, upper management. Well, it depends. Maybe you're a sponsor in your upper management. Some other people maybe? People that work in the finance industry? Anybody who works in the finance industry? Okay. A typical government stakeholders would be in that quadrant. Like people that look after the budgeting, the contracting, all those kind of people are typically upper left quadrant, and you want to spend as little time as possible with them, but you want to keep them satisfied, because the moment that legal compliance gets involved in your product and starts to help, that's usually a problem. I call these people context setters, and sometimes I have even this diagram with me, and I talk about, oh, I do this product, it's really important. Oh yeah, I want to be part of the product. And so this is awesome. I have a board level sponsor for my product development. This is going to be a success. And they're very happy and say, okay, pull out your agenda. Every Friday afternoon, we're going to sit for 2 hours and strategize about the product backlog. 2 hours, Fridays. You realize I'm a board member. I'm really, really busy. So that's a pity. It's a pity because I really would like to have a board level sponsor, like somebody who really play, or I call those Clayton calls them players, upper right quadrant. They play the game with me. But since you don't have the time to play, you automatically become a context setter. So you need to tell me where the boundaries are. What is the playing field that I'm allowed to play in? And once I move outside of the borders, whether it's legal, finance, budgeting, I will come and tell. Having this explicit discussion with them avoids them popping up somewhere later in the project and stepping in to help. And there are a couple of other quadrants. Like I talked about a sprint review. A sprint review would be, this doesn't work, okay? Oh yeah, it works. A sprint review would be awesome to do with these people. Lots of influence, lots of interest. Which doesn't mean everybody. This is a select group. Alright? Often the sprint review has turned into a demo, which was a great XP practice. Let's show people real working software, which you should still do. But in Scrum it's designed to be a strategic alliance. It's a moment where we align about what we're going to do. We spend time looking at the market. I was compared like driving in a car. If you're driving in a car, I have a little bit of glass, which is the rear view mirror, which looks what has happened. That's the amount of time in a sprint review you spend on what has happened. I have a significant amount of glass that looks to the left and the right, looks at the competition, looks at the market. I have a lot of glass looking forward, product backlog, strategies, goals, metrics. That is what a proper sprint review looks like. And in the last company I worked for, the sprint review had become polluted because everybody was there. It was really technical, and the devs were cranking up the code, and it was really interesting, but like the real stakeholders were not coming anymore. And being a professional Scrum trainer, I was like, oh no, this is not what it should be. And I was like, I was really trying to turn it into a proper sprint review, and I struggled. And at some point I realized this is not going to work. And it was a company, it was partly based in Africa, and we have Nigerian teams and Kenyan teams. And I realized that the word sprint review is being so tainted, it's never going to work. So I introduced on Monday morning the strategic business alignment meeting. That's a lot of expensive words. The Nigerians loved it. And all the real stakeholders showed up for the strategic business alignment meeting, and directly after that we had sprint planning. Now, as a PSD, this of course hurts, but it's not about getting the words right, it's about doing the right thing. So make sure you have these meetings in place. Now, there's a couple of other groups, I'm not going to run through all of them, but these are typical teams you would want to have in those quadrants. And to help you with those conversations, I talked about this, let me go through the people. This is Nairobi. And when you talk to, because I picked Nairobi because she has these beautiful eyes, these puppy eyes. And that's something I always like to do. My daughter told me she's totally loco, but I just took a pretty picture. But having these puppy eyes, go into your stakeholders in your company and ask things like, what's the company mission? What's the problem is the product trying to resolve? It's about people, and these are typical questions you could ask. The last one is really interesting. As a product owner, what do you feel a successful product person does in your organization? I think that's a good question. And typical things you could use like personas, jobs to be done, these things that, does this resonate? Is this something you recognize? Yeah, so that's not really what you're looking for. I know this is from a different series. It's a grey old man telling you what the world is like. A little bit like me. So this is not the answers what you're looking for. You could still have this conversation. You could still address these topics. But what you're really looking for is what's in their minds. What is their business goal? What are their needs? What are they afraid of? What are they trying to get done? What keeps them up at night? And those other questions are just pathways towards that conversation. And sometimes it can be about, we went through a downsizing last year and I don't want to go through that again, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose some of my people. So we want to have interesting topics for them. Or there's some VP blowing down my neck. You're going to try to figure out what is it that keeps them up and try to help them with those questions. And your regular jobs. Now, next one, product love. Because this is ultimately what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to turn customers into fans to the extent that they are willing to tattoo your product on their bodies. This actually exists. This is John Deere. John Deere has some fanatic users. You can Google it on like John Deere tattoos and go Google images. Don't go to page 2. You've been warned. But that's something you're trying to figure out. What makes customers really love your product? And of course, I also found your main characters. So as a suggestion, some people that you could talk to. And we're going to run through. So the development team. So as a POs, how often do we talk to our development teams? Anybody has a suggestion? Daily? It's not mandatory, it doesn't say so. But I've always thought like the dev team is interesting because they have this different language. And the business also has a different language. It's not Romanian versus English, but it's more like geekish and you have business-ish. And you are here to help them translate. And so learn the language. Customer support. Who has spent time on customer support? Cool. This is a very good lesson for product owners. Go to customer support. Hey, I'm new, I'm a product manager. Can I spend a couple of hours sitting with you, listening through the calls? That can be a very cleansing experience because customers will tell you what's wrong with your product. Everything. And I worked with TomTom, like the little navigation devices. And I was on customer support and there was an elderly gentleman calling me who had driven his vehicle with a caravan behind it up a mountain. And the device said, oh, just make a 180-degree turn. And he's like, I don't know how to do this. He was panicking. And a couple of months later, I was doing bug triage together with my tech lead. And we had this bug about 180-degree turns on small roads. He said, oh, this never happens. I was like, yeah, but if it happens, it's really painful. So having that in the back of your mind is really helpful. Sales, we're going to talk about sales. I bit crazy. Typically we don't like sales. Who likes sales? Ah, good, 2 people. Now, prove my point. Now, sales is interesting. So, whenever you buy a new car, if you buy a new car, I never buy a new car, but if you buy a new car, you go to a showroom and you're looking around, and there's somebody. Usually, it's a man in a nice suit. He comes up to you and says, "Oh, can I help you?" And what do we say?
Just looking.
Well, just look. This is like universal, all over the world. No, you're not looking. You're here to buy a car. And this person knows more about, definitely more than me, but usually knows more about the cars than you do. So why don't we want this person to help us? Anything?
Because they push you. They don't care about you, they care about sales.
Yeah, they don't care, but at least that's what we think. Well, maybe it's true, I don't know. This is also universal, worldwide. We don't trust salespeople. But it's interesting to have this relationship with them. This is also when I talk to customers, I usually say, hey, Chris, I'm product management, and I'm here to learn about you, so excited. I'm not sales. Didn't mention I'm from product management. I usually tell them 3 or 4 times that I'm not sales, just to enforce that. But it's interesting. Product management, what do they think about? What is the strategy? I'm going to give you some questions on these. Do talk to your end users. This is super important. Make sure you have some way of a connection to your end users, even if you have to go through an intermediary. Finance, and I've put up as because, well, there's probably more people that I haven't thought of. It's just a model. But customer support, these are very good questions to talk to think about when you talk to customer support, like the worst complaint, and also why would people buy your product? It often helps you to discover what real life situations are and how that translates back to what you're actually trying to achieve. The development team, and I think this is interesting, I had a huge flame war on LinkedIn with a couple of Agile coaches, because they were really about how you have a development team, how fast can you deliver, and box rates, all talking about internal metrics. And those are super important, and the discussion turned into 0 defects code, which I think is super interesting, but not very realistic. Because it's always a balance between having perfect products and having a good enough product and get out there. But I think these questions were far more interesting, because these tell you if your team understands what they're building and what value is. And the less knowledge they have about the value in the customer, the harder you have to work. Right. I had a project building software for ambulances, which was really cool. And one of the things that we did in the contract is that we would have a sprint review every 2 weeks, somewhere in the Netherlands, in a hospital, at the ambulance department, with real ambulance people. Which is crazy, because these are really busy people. And it's almost unplannable to see if they have enough staff. But it was so helpful to have your engineering team visit a real ambulance, giving them the build of the last week. And then people play with it, like, this is rubbish, I'm not going to drive with this. Oh, that's interesting, why? Well, it's a really beautiful design with buttons and drop-down menus. And you do realize we're doing 80 kilometers per hour over speed ramps, and you want me to fill in a drop-down menu. This is never going to work. Yeah, that makes sense. And they took one of the engineers and put him in the ambulance. Okay, if I find somebody in the street, I'll put you in the ambulance, and I'll strap you in, and I'll give you some medicine. And I then have to note it down, because if they get the same medicine in the hospital again, then you die. And you don't want that. It's kind of a waste of the trip. But so he was explaining, I said, okay, walk me through the process. And he put him in the ambulance, and he started to put him on his gloves, and the guy said, whoa, gloves. Don't do gloves. Well, I'm going to do gloves, you know, but yeah, but we made a beautiful device, and it's iPad based. For those of you who have an iPad, gloves and iPad don't work well together. So you have to take the gloves here, not taking off the glove. So next iteration we came back with an old-fashioned touchscreen. I'm not sure if you remember that. You had capacitive screens, which are basically glass-based. And you have inductive screens, which means you have to push really hard. And they were very cheap, they were very low cost, and they didn't feel very beautiful, but they were super happy. We would never have figured that out without actually putting engineers in the same room as people that use the product. Product management. Yeah, these are interesting questions. Often I find product management extremely busy with the day-to-day business, where they should be busy with the day-tomorrow business. I don't know, but they should be looking far more at the future. Short-term strategy, long-term strategy, how do these things correlate? How do you show that you're delivering value to the business? How can you show you're making impact for the customer? And there's some fancy words for that, like business model. McKinsey has the 3 horizons, like you start out, you run the existing product, you have these sustaining innovations, but you stay in the same market. Like at TomTom, we had the original device ran on Windows Mobile. Most of you are too young to remember what that was like. But then we moved to Linux, which was already a little bit better, and then they moved to Android. Knowing where you are on this journey is super important in how you steer your engineering teams. Sales, we talked about sales. But these are interesting questions. So who are your competitors? What makes them a competitor? I love to travel with sales to customers. Be careful though, as product people, we are here to learn, they are here to sell. We already established that. I remember going to one client and it was about to sign, it was like his pen was almost in the contract. I was like, oh, I'm so excited that we're doing business with you, because you're such an interesting customer, and I'm so excited to see and to learn about how you're going to implement the new legislation. He was like, new legislation? Yeah, because as a product manager, you typically know more about the market than your customers. I said, I don't know anything about new legislation. Yeah, 1st of January, new legislation. We've been trying to figure out how to implement this in the product. It was like, he put his pen down, it's like, I need to think about this. And it was not a very fun drive back in the car, upstairs. So, alright, so I learned after they sign the deal, before they start using the product, is sort of your Goldilocks window. Because then they still give you feedback on what they bought or why they think the product works. That's super important. What about finance? Who loves working with finance? Yeah, this is also universal. Nobody loves working with finance. They're also mostly nice. But super important, like you're the product owners, other words for product owners, value maximizers. If any of you are ever going to do a PCP1 exam, that might be a question. Value maximizers. You're here to maximize the value. So what is value? How many of you know how expensive a team is, or your team is? Yeah, not enough. For the product people, not enough. I worked at CarePay, and I asked this question to my HR. Hey, I need to figure out how expensive the team is. And they sent me a dump of the database with all the salaries. I'm like, whoa, I'm not supposed to know all this. I need to tell you about GDPR. Now, I just want to know, is this 1 Mercedes or 2 Mercedes? And the reason why is because there's going to be some kind of very high up stakeholder is coming to me and saying, Chris, you need to build this and this feature. And then I need to explain to him, hey, the feature you're asking is about 4 Mercedeses of value. Would you rather have 4 Mercedeses, or do you want to think, wow, is it that expensive? Yeah, it's that expensive. Okay, then we need to think about it. So knowing how much your team costs, you don't need to know down to the penny, but know roughly what a team is. And then just what's about. And there's some other interesting things. Yeah, I'm not going to. Processes. So for the people that are doing Scrum makes your life extremely easy when you're joining a new company. Because these are all the important events that you need to attend to. In my current company, we transitioned to Rockefeller Habits, which is similar, but seems to lack a couple of things that I'm going to add. But the advantage over most of the other systems is that the planning is really rigid. So have you blocked all these slots in your agenda? And this is the easy part. When you join the company, your agenda is empty. Fix this first, because it will get full very, very fast. And if you struggle with that, yeah, there's actually a broader picture. So the Scrum part is easy, there's a broader picture. Usually you also need to think about other events that are common to that company. So what does the release schedule look like? If you saw a number of people doing SAFe, If you're doing safe, what's the cadence of the release train? But also other things, like when is the board review? Because when the board review is going to happen, your boss is going to get very nervous. So if I already know when he is going to get nervous, I know a couple of days or weeks before that how I'm going to spoon feed him the right information, so he doesn't lose sleep over my project. And ideally I am on the board, but that's a different question. But the same is true for analysts, the idea to cash flow. How does that idea come into the company? Even if you're a product owner of a team and you don't influence the whole cycle, knowing what the cycle looks like is already super helpful. What kind of feedback loops are in place? And if you struggle with that, I have included in the slide notes, which Daniel is probably going to distribute after the conference, a helpful Casa de Papel agenda for you, which you can print out and stick to your wall. Thank you very much. And it will allow you to build the perfect plan. Alright, so now we've talked to all these people and it's time for you to build the perfect plan. How many of you have ever built a nice detailed plan for your development? Yeah, there should be more of you. We all have done this. And usually it goes something like this. This is me on a product launch day. We're shipping the products. It's going really, really well. And you see people laughing who saw the series. Where are the customers? Yeah. That's how I looked on product launch. Yeah. So this is what happens, huh? It doesn't mean you should not have a plan. You should always have a plan, but it may not go as you expect it to go. And it's true for the police, who had this idea of we're sending in the tank and it's all going to go well. It's also true for the robbers who thought we're sort of modern Robin Hood, and people are going to like us. Well, people don't tend to like you if you blow up other people. So you have a plan, but the plan depends. If you ever work with a consultant, this is a sentence they will use a lot. How does this work? Well, it depends. Which is a great consultant answer. If any consultant has a structure with that, your reply is, this is interesting, Chris. On what does it depend? And make them work for their money. So, what does it depend? Well, the plan depends. And on what does it depend? Well, again, here's my beautiful circle. Here are 4 domains that you can think about to build your plan. So, my first domain would be, okay, what value are we generating today? How's the product doing? What is value for the product? Then we're going to talk about how quickly can we respond to the market. Basically, this is about agility. There's a quadrant that talks about unlocking value from the market. So a lot of people build products, but the market is shrinking, but we just keep building products. That's not the best thing you can do. That might be a good place to start innovating. So how can you unlock value from the market, and how healthy is our product? What does our product look like? I think these are very interesting areas to think about. To give you some ideas what you could be thinking about, like value from today, how do we rank against competitors? What does our value stream look like? Analytics, personas, those are the typical instruments you would find in that domain. And I would expect product owners after 90 days I used to walk around with a binder. I think that's a bit of a fashion. But I expect you to have a number of documents in your laptop or your iPad with these kind of artifacts. Or even better, put them on a wall somewhere for everybody to see and inspect. Well, how you can respond to the market? Do proper Scrum. That already gives you this ability to ship done products. I met Ken Schweber, and at some point I asked him, so, can you summarize Scrum for me? I said, ship done products. That's it. Everything else is there just to ship done products. That's what you need to learn. In XP you have tons of interesting techniques, continuous integration, continuous delivery. How many of you are doing test-driven development? Pro tip, start doing test-driven development. That really speeds things up. Basically this, create your tests before you write the code. There's a company in the US, I forgot his name, and they built cars using Scrum, and they started designing the tests, like the safety tests, before they designed the car. And they're one of the safest cars now, and they're one of the lightest cars that has been designed. Because we start thinking about how do we test stuff, rather than let's design it and then think about how we test stuff. The healthiness of the product. A/B testing, refactoring, roadmaps. Lots of companies have these huge refactoring projects going on. Like for the next 6 months we can't ship anything. That's a bad place to be in as a product owner, because you're really stuck. So making things smaller and moving it down. I like to think of refactoring like running on the beach. If you're running on the beach, you will get wet. But it depends if you're ankle deep. You can still make good pace. When you're knee deep, you're significantly impacted by the technical depth. When you're down to your neck, it's hopeless. You can't run anymore. This is you've waited too long in resolving your technical debt. So it's a game of finding the right distance to the beach. And yeah, so the other things are about market assessment, strategy, or North Star. But this is all still fluffy here. This is typical presentation stuff. So I'll give you some metrics to think about. Like in the value part, how much is my product generating? How happy are the customers? How happy are the employees? What's the cost ratio? Those are interesting metrics. And usually you can influence one of them, but not all of them. Like I can make my product cheaper, and I'll probably sell more, but my margin goes down. Okay, I'll make my people work harder, and the employee satisfaction goes down. I'll lower the quality, then customer satisfaction goes down. So it's like it's a system of variables, and if you can raise all of them, you're in a good spot. Usually product owners, product managers are really busy with this stuff because it's in the now, it's very visible, it's on the front of the mind of their managers. So it's definitely important, but it's not the only thing that's important. The other part, release frequency, how often can we release to the market? What is the cycle time whenever we put in a new idea? How quickly does it enter in the market? How long does it take us to stabilize a feature? So they ship something, it breaks. Let's ship it again, it still breaks. Ship it again, it breaks again. Those are metrics that are interesting. Your agile coaches, scrum masters are always very much knowledgeable about these metrics. But it's still part of you as a product owner to prioritize them. Other metrics you should capture are defect rates. What is the defect rate? How many versions are installed? Do we need to backport a lot of functionality? Are we helping people to migrate to the newest version? How much are features actually used? A great way to refactor would be to remove functionality that is not used. This is typically your tech lead complaining about. And imagine if you could loop that into your value system. And finally, things, in my book I talk about Newtonian growth. I'm not going to explain that. Yeah, but it's basically about accelerating your growth. But the other one's satisfaction gap. So basically asking the customer, what would be your satisfaction, your ultimate satisfaction level for this product? Like this. What's the current product doing? That's like that. Oh, there's a gap. There's opportunity for me to close the satisfaction gap. It makes sense to keep developing this product. How many customers are there? There's like a lot of them. Now I have a square. I like to make things simpler. So you have this square of unrealized value. As a product owner, if you have all this data, you have a great start to make far more informed decisions. Did you know they made Castle Apple trainers? Reebok actually made red trainers, not just the jumpsuits. And I like the word trainer because I'm a trainer, but also because it's a great way to think about all these things. It's not that you get them right on the first try. The experience is in doing them over and over again. So, 4 weeks, 4 topics. Let's see. Animations. When you talk to people, the key question is, what makes me successful? What is your biggest pain? When you talk about the product, your key question, what you're trying to figure out is what will turn users into fans. When you talk about the process, you're trying to figure out what makes things move, what blocks things. So you can be efficient unblocking those. And when you talk about the plan, it's really about how do we measure success, maybe my success between brackets, but it's about the success of the product. And maybe on a final note, I used to work for a company, CarePay, and it was about giving people the power to care, and especially in Africa, giving people access to healthcare that previously did not have access to healthcare. Now, once you've established that, everything becomes much easier. So when you do goal setting, and the sales department says, look, we want to sell 10 million more. No, we want to onboard 1 million more people on the platform. Because the purpose is giving people access to care. If I onboard 1 more million people, it will also give you 10 million revenue. But if I make 10 million revenue the target, you will go after people that have a lot of money. And that's not the goal. The goal is onboarding people. So having this crisp in your mind is really important. Yeah, you mentioned I wrote a couple of books. I wrote the Product Samurai a couple of years ago. There's a new book coming. Unfortunately, it's only available currently in the US. Photograph this one. Photograph this one. You can get the Product Samurai on Amazon, but especially for the conference, I managed to get a rebate code from Informit, who's the publisher of the book. So yeah, you can get the new book on product ownership, which is not yet in the stores. This is a first. But you can order it from Informit. Now, this is enough marketing. I have a final quote from you, from my youngest daughter. Lea, she said, van proberen ga je leren. You obviously all know what this means. It means you have to try if you want to learn. You have to practice if you want to learn. Alright, and to help you get started with that, we're going to play Massive Multiplayer Fun Grappling. Yeah? So, the way it works as follows, is you grab each other by the fingers, and you count to 3, or you say 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a fun war. That's the official invite. And then you try to grab the thumb of your opponent. Now, what makes it multiplayer is because you have 2 hands. Hopefully. You never know. If you have 1 hand, you can play with 1 hand. If you have 3 hands, you can play with 3 hands. So, you grab the hand of your table mate, you declare a fun war, and you try to win. Are the instructions clear? No? In that case, I need a volunteer. Ah, there you go. Alright, so you grab the hand like this, and the fun goes 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a fun war. And now you capture the fun. So yeah, I won, it's easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a fun war. Ah! See? And now, because we had a session on multitasking, you can use 2 hands. Everybody ready? Understood? Go! For more than 6 seconds, your brain starts to release oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone or the cuddle friendship hormone. So you should feel a little bit nicer to each other. And has all kinds of positive effects. You start laughing, you get more energy, Yeah, you're more open to build connections. And this is what I wish for you. I wish you a very successful heist. I hope you all win. My team, of course, a little bit more. But I hope you all win. And have a great day and make some new friends.
If you have questions, maybe one or two questions. Okay. Thank you so much, Chris, for your, I don't know, inspiring and useful models you presented. I have one question. So there are a lot of, let's say, good practices for a product manager to start his or her journey. Could you tell us worst practice? What a product manager should never do?
I think we had some great examples when we started. But I think when you look at product ownership, the core of the role is, the core of ownership is really about owning it. That's why Jeff can pick the word. And that's really about owning the mistakes that the team made or you made and building on that. So the worst part of it would be blaming others. And I was talking to Simon before on the Lego game, which sounds really interesting, so go join that. And which I ran a simulation like that in the past. And I had teams build cities out of Lego, and then we had somebody play the CEO, and I was the product owner, of course. And the CEO said, it's really bad. And I said, with the team, this is the B team. And I'm trying, but this is the best they can do. And you could feel the students get angry. They're like, we're not happy with this. And then the second round, the CEO came around and said, this looks really beautiful. I said, I did all the hard work. I spent so much time getting all the requirements right. And they were like really pissed. Like, don't worry, there's a learning element. Because I explained to them, look, this is how some of you might behave towards your teams. And your behavior is instantly mimicked by the teams. Because if I shove the blame to the teams, guess what they're about to do? That's not my fault, it's the tester's fault. Yeah, come on. The requirement engineer didn't put any good requirements. Yeah, it's always infrastructure. That's it, it's always infrastructure. But they keep putting, your behavior is exactly what they're about to do. So ownership, I think, is the key word. And not having that ownership is probably the worst thing you could do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One second, Chris, because yesterday we wanted to experience a little bit Cluj, so we went to sightsee and we visited a factory. What kind of factory did we visit? Any idea? Beer factory, of course. And there is a great beer factory. We thought that okay, it's a small building. I don't know if you have seen it, but of course you're from Cluj. It's a small factory, so we thought we are going to having a tour, and it could take how long? Half an hour, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours. Actually, the beer is great, and this is for you. Thanks to Burlog, which I invite you to visit. It's the local craft beer.
Nice, thank you. I probably can't take this on the flight, so I'll have a headache tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, enjoy it.